I know I kind of failed to answer this question. Is Rand a philosopher? And I'm going to promise you at the end of this, I'm going to give you the answer yes or no, cut and dry. That's it. But I do want to say it's a complicated question. And I have already set up in the preliminary videos this idea that philosophy can be defined different ways. But I wouldn't hesitate to say that the answer to this question has so far failed to take into account the real subject, her. The debate is about her lack of two things, or at least the current debate: rigor and openness, and lack of empathy. Two lacks: her rigor and openness because she doesn't allow people to question her, and her lack of empathy because people misinterpret this notion of selfishness and don't get the Aristotelian notion of value when they just emotionally disagree with her. So those are the things that this question depends on. And what I'm trying to say today is that's not the real her. What is the real Rand persuasive element? Her dismissive dogmatism as her thing, as her primary style. Her dismissiveness is what actually makes the case against hypercritical philosophy and for common sense, if that's what you want to call it. So Thomas Reid's chiding of David Hume in 1760 really contained this Shakespearean element of satire and ridicule. And he did it through rhetoric. He didn't just say Hume's wrong. He did. But he also did things like didn't answer the question and said this philosopher, wouldn't even mention him by name because he was making fun of him, by kind of saying, I don't even need to mention his name. He's so dismissible. And so Reid was often famous for saying when Hume walks out his front door, he becomes a realist, and leaving it at that. And yes, Reid did develop from his ability and notion and experience with science a detailed critical analysis of perception, of how we perceive, how that relates to realism, how that disputes David Hume's empirical concepts. He did do that. But his value, Thomas Reid's, was really his ridicule and jokes and fake humility, his Socratic fake humility about Hume. Well, I don't know anything, but this great new philosopher on the horizon, which is suggested when I walk out my door, I don't see a reality. And it was in that I think he was persuasive. And if you don't believe me, go watch Daniel Robinson on YouTube, who really fleshes out this idea that the ridicule and the jokes and the humility and the dismissiveness were really the point. And I think Reid was cognizant of this, and I think Rand was not cognizant. I think Rand was not aware that she was being dogmatic in a way that helped her argument. I think she was dogmatic because she couldn't help herself. If you don't believe me, you're out. She was dismissive of every philosopher. I wrote down this quote from George H. Smith. Other than Aristotle, Aquinas, and Locke, I don't recall that Rand ever had a word of praise for any of the great philosophers. And this was true. She even broke it down with every single philosopher from start to finish and how bad they were. That's what she did. And again, the value is in how dismissive, dogmatic, and short she was with these people. Kant's just the most evil man in the universe. Kind of sounds like Trump. It's a common sense attack through ridicule that basically says, and I think this is her value, basically says, I don't need to respond to you. What you're saying is so dumb and so ignorant of basic principles, innate knowledge, our connection to an actual concrete reality. Your ideas are so ignorant and they're so ill-founded, I'm not responding. You're just simply dumb. This was Shakespeare. And I think that's her value. If you believe me that that's Rand and her dismissiveness is her style and her thing, then that opens up a new way to answer this question. I promise you I would tell you yes or no. And it's kind of not going to be a yes or no. I'm sorry. As a philosopher, this is what it is. Is Ayn Rand a philosopher? Yes and no. Is she an academic philosopher? No. Why? Because she does not allow for doubt. She doesn't have any room for disagreement, dialectic, doubt, criticism. If you disagree with her, kiss my ass. Like it's, and Reid wasn't like that. So Rand was so much like that that removes her from academic philosophy, and not just hypercritical. I would say she's not a philosopher, but is she a new kind of thinker which accomplishes more which has had this great influence and which has a depth and a criticality to it that is as much a value as David Hume. Yes. And so you have to call her something else. That's it. A common sense thinker. I've been saying this for years. We need to get away from the word philosophy even. It's so screwed up and has so much baggage. That's your answer. I hope that helps.